The mysterious phantom of the 20th century. The enigmatic story of an elusive taker of lives. The tale of a serial killer who remained unidentified almost always begins on a grim winter night in London's Soho district. At the beginning of the 20th century, when the city was still shrouded in fog and lit by gas lamps, people began to disappear. These disappearances quickly became the subject of dramatic headlines. But despite the police's efforts, the mysterious crimes remained unsolved. The figure responsible for them was dubbed the Phantom of the 20th Century. This enigmatic killer claimed the lives of many innocent people, leaving behind only fear and bewilderment. Among the victims were both young women and elderly men. It seemed the criminal acted without any logic. No one could even guess who might be behind these terrible acts, as he never left the slightest trace that could lead investigators to him. Rumors and speculation multiplied. Some spoke of a maniacal revenge, while others assumed it was the work of an entire gang specializing in ritual murders. Each new case only added fuel to the fire until fear engulfed the entire city and newspapers began reporting on it daily. The capital of England trembled, and despite thorough investigations, the phantom remained elusive. Years of uncertainty and terror passed, and as the memory of those events gradually began to fade, people still asked themselves, who was this mysterious maniac? Why was he able to cover his tracks so skillfully? Could it be that we missed some important detail that could shed light on his identity? With every new question that arose, the story became more and more tangled, like a labyrinth with no way out. However, his deeds left behind clues, keys to the mystery that are just waiting for their time. Shocking evidence, traces left at the crime scenes. The first thing that stands out at the crime scenes of the Phantom of the 20th Century is the eerie cleanliness. The bloody traces lead to neither a single door nor a single street. It feels as if this killer moved like a ghost, leaving nothing material behind. Moreover, not a single piece of evidence suitable for forensic analysis was found. This alarmed the investigators. After all, in an era when forensic examinations were already gaining strength, the absence of even a single hair or fingerprint became a real mystery. However, there was one strange detail. At the scene of each incident, a small metal keychain was found. There were no identifying marks or inscriptions on it, but it was always found next to the victim's body, as if mocking the investigators' inability to solve the case. This keychain haunted the investigators, who tried to figure out its meaning. Was it a coincidence, or did the killer want to leave his signature? Urban legends quickly began to grow with speculation. Some claimed that the keychain was a symbol of a secret society pursuing its own dark goals. However, none of these theories were ever confirmed, as not a single keychain led to a breakthrough. Other pieces of evidence, such as shoe prints or fragments of clothing, were just as mysterious. The tracks always ended abruptly at the edge of the alley, as if the killer had vanished into thin air. The clothing found near one of the victims was so worn out that it was impossible to link it to anyone specific. Despite all the efforts of the police and detectives, these small clues remained just tiny pieces of a terrible puzzle. And so the Phantom continued his crimes, leaving behind elusive traces and instilling terror in people's hearts. What other hidden card did this killer have up his sleeve, and why couldn't even the most experienced investigators catch him? These questions led to the next steps in analyzing his methods in order to uncover what lay behind these sophisticated murders. A dark signature, analyzing the killer's methods and his perverse rituals. Each crime committed by the Phantom of the 20th Century was like a meticulously staged theatrical performance, with him playing the role of the main director. The killer's signature stood out for its grim sophistication, making one wonder what exactly was hidden behind his actions. The time and place of each crime were chosen so that no one would have a chance to intervene. The nighttime hours and the dark alleys of London provided the Phantom with the perfect stage for his bloody drama. His method of killing was marked by both brutality and precision. Each victim was found dead at the same time of day, as if some invisible force, obeying only him, was at work. What was strange was the way he left his victims, always in a specific pose, with precise geometry, as if even the direction of their gaze mattered. This maniac never used the same weapon twice. Strangled, stabbed, or drowned, the victims of the Phantom always died in different ways. This gave investigators the impression that they were dealing with several criminals. But everything pointed to the same person, which made him even more mysterious and elusive. He also never missed a chance to confuse the investigation with psychological pressure. Each of his crimes was accompanied by strange rituals, as if he reveled in the very atmosphere of fear he imposed on the city. For example, the candles left at the crime scenes were arranged in a specific pattern that no one could decipher. These candles burned down completely, leaving only oily stains, the only traces that seemed intentional. Along with the gruesome murders, the Phantom left behind a question: who was he and what was he trying to achieve? Why did he play this game with the police and society? These details created a disturbing sense of uncertainty and ambiguity, as if the killer was still watching the world, hidden in the shadows of the past. But even greater horrors lay ahead, waiting to be uncovered. Secret victims. Who are these people and why did they become the maniac's targets? The victims of the Phantom of the 20th Century had nothing in common with each other except for their tragic fate. They were not connected by age or social status. Young women, elderly men, the unemployed and respected citizens, it seemed the killer chose them at random. But was it really random, or was there a darker logic behind it all? One of the most striking examples of these mysterious victims was Anna Carter, a 26-year-old waitress from a small cafe in Soho. She was found on a dark alley just a few blocks from her workplace. Anna had no enemies. Her life was as simple as it was unremarkable. Yet the Phantom chose her, just as he had dozens of others. Another victim was Mr. Jonathan Brooks, a respected elderly man known in his neighborhood for his charity and kindness. His sudden disappearance and the subsequent discovery of his body shocked the neighbors. For many, his death became a symbol that no one was safe from the horrors brought by this maniac. Some tried to find connections between the victims to investigate their past and their surroundings, but found only scattered fragments. However, writer Gerald Thompson, who studied these cases, put forward a hypothesis: the killer might have chosen them because society was unlikely to notice their absence. Perhaps this was his way of showing just how fragile and indifferent society can be. These murders sparked a wave of fear, and people began to wonder who would be the next victim. The maniac acted as if he wanted to show the world just how tightly he held everyone in his clutches. Time passed, and with each crime the list of his victims grew, but the evidence still did not lead to his exposure. What other secrets are hidden around these tragic fates, and will anyone be able to uncover them? Terrifying testimonies recalled by those who managed to survive. The survivors of encounters with the Phantom of the 20th century were few and just as mysterious as the killer himself. Their stories only deepened the darkness and mystique surrounding this figure. One such person was Harry Peters, an ordinary tailor who was returning home late one evening. He recalls how the shadows closed in on him, and at some point he was engulfed by an eerie silence. Instead of becoming the next victim, he suddenly heard a quiet whistle, as if someone or something was warning him of danger. That sound made him stop for a moment, and it was that very moment that saved his life. Harry desperately tried to remember any details about his attacker, but all that remained in his memory was a vague figure in a cloak. Another witness was a young woman whose name was withheld. She recounted how, one night, she felt someone's intense gaze on her, a cold, penetrating stare as if she were being studied down to her very bones. She saw a figure standing in the distance as if unwilling to come closer, yet at the same time evoking an inexplicable fear. The young woman recalls being seized by a panicked urge to run, instinctively sensing that something more than just a thirst for blood was driving this maniac. These horrifying testimonies left behind more questions than answers. Their stories, like pieces of a mosaic, added weight to the investigation of the ghost's manifestations, but at the same time left the inquiry at a dead end, providing no clear picture. The terrifying atmosphere of unbearable fear and sorrow that enveloped all those who managed to survive only worsened the mood of society and heightened the tension in the city. But it wasn't just fear that made people anxious. It was something more. It was as if this maniac possessed an unknown power that destroyed them from within, even without any physical threat. Each new testimony added fuel to the fire, making the investigation into the nature of this elusive killer even more complicated and confusing. What mysteries are hidden behind these survivors' stories, and are they capable of shedding light on the true nature of this mysterious maniac? Abandoned crime scenes, journeys into the heart of horror. To understand the true nature of the Phantom of the 20th century, we set out to visit the sites of his crimes. The abandoned scenes where the bodies of his victims were found send a chill down your spine. Each one is like a grim puzzle, with pieces he left behind as if issuing a challenge. These sinister places, covered in cobwebs and forgotten by time, are now just empty shells, but once real tragedies unfolded here. Let's head to one of the alleys in Soho where Anna Carter became his last victim. This place seemed to have been chosen specifically to create a terrifying atmosphere. The narrow streets, unlit by any light, were perfect for a stealthy and silent crime. Shards of glass crunch underfoot, and the air is thick with the musty smell mixed with echoes of the past. Here, among the shadows, the killer seemed to dissolve into the night mist. This alley is far from the only one. The abandoned dock where the body of Mr. Jonathan Brooks was found is no less unsettling. The eerie sight of the place where he met his end was the scene of a brutal departure from life. The worn-out boats with rusty hulls and the still water seem to bear witness to the ghost repeating its ritual. Walking through these places, it becomes clear that time has stood still here. Small details like puddles of rainwater reflect the moonlight, as if reminding us that cruel acts once played out here. These crime scenes, forgotten by most, conceal sinister secrets. They are silent witnesses, preserving traces of what we have been trying to understand for so long. Perhaps it is here, among the abandoned corners of the city, that the key to uncovering the identity of the one who so skillfully evaded justice lies hidden. Riddles with no answers. Why did the investigation reach a dead end? The investigators, scrutinizing every piece of evidence, tried to unravel the tangle of mysteries left by the phantom of the 20th century. So why did it all end in a deadlock? First of all, the investigative methods of that time were limited. There were no modern technologies for DNA analysis or advanced computer systems. Yet even so, nothing was found at the crime scenes that could shed light on the killer's identity. The absence of traditional traces, fingerprints, hair, or fragments of clothing put the detectives in a difficult position. It seemed as if this person was almost invisible. There were other difficulties as well. No actual eyewitnesses were registered. Even after thoroughly questioning local residents, not the slightest clue could be uncovered. Those who claimed to have seen something strange could not provide a clear description. There was a sense that fear and confusion were working in the maniac's favor. Each new crime deepened the public's distrust of the police, which also hindered the investigation. People preferred to avoid contact with the authorities, fearing not only the murders themselves but also the consequences of speaking out about them. Moreover, the failures in the investigation fueled public opinion and gave rise to numerous rumors and speculations, which distracted the investigation from real evidence. Many believed in the mystical nature of the killer, assuming that he drew inspiration from occult practices. This swarm of information served only as a diversion, confusing the investigators even further. But what is most strange is that, despite the case coming to a halt, the murder stopped just as suddenly as they had begun. This left a sense of incompleteness and countless speculations, but not a single definite answer. Why did the killer disappear without a trace? Was it a deliberate game, or did something happen that stopped him? These questions linger in the air while the ghost case itself remains unfathomable, as if it has been shrouded by centuries-old shadows. An elusive shadow of the past. Who is behind these brutal crimes, and why? And now we've come to the most important question. Who was behind these brutal crimes, and why have they remained unsolved? Despite the lack of clear evidence, there were several theories that investigators and experts tried to explore. One of the most popular was the theory that the ghost could have been someone from the victim's inner circle. Perhaps the killer was so close to his targets that he managed to remain unnoticed, which made his actions even more sinister. There is also a theory that the maniac belonged to a secret organization and his crimes could have been part of some kind of ritual ceremony. These assumptions were based on strange symbols found near the bodies and the unique way they were arranged, which resembled occult symbolism. However, none of the theories were confirmed and each of them remained just a guess. In addition, some detectives believed that the killer had skills in medicine or science which allowed him to use methods known only to a limited circle of people. This theory arose because of the extraordinary precision and calculation in his actions, as well as his ability to conceal traces and evidence. Perhaps these were skills that the Phantom used to mystify the investigation, creating an impression of elusiveness and grim mystery. Despite all efforts, the identity of the 20th century Phantom remained a mystery. Perhaps the killer stopped his crimes out of fear of being caught, or maybe he simply achieved his goal, whatever it may have been. We can only speculate about what drove this mysterious maniac, but his shadow still hangs over the dark pages of history.